It's wonderful to see so many of you here this evening. I'm Linda Harling-Stalker, the director of the Brian Mulroney Institute of Government and one of your co-hosts this evening. Before we begin tonight's event, I'd like to acknowledge that we're meeting on Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. This territory is covered by the treaties of peace and friendship with the Mi'kmaq Maliseet people, first signed with the British Crown in 1725. This acknowledgement is a reminder that learning and listening are a continuous process and are integral to reconciliation with Indigenous people. I want to take a moment to express how deeply saddened I and those in the Mulroney Institute were to hear of the recent passing of the Honorable Murray Sinclair. Through his work as chair of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, Senator Sinclair gave space for the stories to be told of the injustices experienced by Indigenous people over many generations. It is through his work that we are reminded that we are all treaty people and need to listen and act upon the 94 calls to action. Again, we are all treaty people. The Brian Mulroney Institute of Government is very pleased to be co-organizing this candidate forum with the StFX Student Union. This forum provides a platform where our ridings candidates have the opportunity to display the best of politics, where dignity, decency, and decorum prevail. At times, these qualities may seem to be in short supply, but we know these are values that are not only at the core of the Mulroney Institute's work, but are what StFX and our community aspire to embody. We are thrilled that the Student Union is our partner for tonight's event. Part of the mission of the Mulroney Institute is to give students the knowledge, skills, and tools to be engaged citizens and future leaders, providing opportunities where they can see civil discourse, thoughtful deliberations, and democracy at work can help them forge a path where we may not agree, but we can respect each other. Today, some folks may be trying to figure out what yesterday's US election may mean to us. I ask, though, that tonight we focus on what our candidates have to say. These excellent candidates will be providing their visions and arguments about how they would work to ensure peace, order, and good government for the residents of Antigonish County. Before I leave the podium, I want to thank Drs. Anna Juschlag and Rebecca Wallace for taking the helm on this, Brendan Roberts and Francisco Chang for being the student union representatives who helped to organize this event, to James Ochner for being our tech guru, facilities management and conference services who made sure everything in the room was prepped, to you for attending, and lastly, to the candidates. It's not easy to stand up here in front of 100 or so of your neighbors and friends, so I applaud you for doing this. I'm looking forward to this insightful forum, and as a parting remark, especially to our Nova Scotian students, please get out and vote on November 24th. Thank you. I now ask Brendan Roberts to come up and speak on behalf of the Student Union.
Hello, good evening, everyone. Welcome to students, staff, faculty, community members, and of course our lovely candidates. We're honored to co-host this event with the Brian Mulroney Institute of Government. It's something that we love doing. We love engaging in civil democracy. And so these types of events where the Student Union and the Mulroney Institute can come together and collaborate is just something that we really love doing, and it's really special. It's a great opportunity to hear directly from the candidates, especially from students, whether you're listening here in person or online via our live stream that we have on YouTube, which will also be put up and left up afterwards, so anyone can go and watch if they want to listen more detailed about a candidate's response to something. Over the course of this election and during any election, the Students' Union runs a Get Out the Vote campaign. This is a nonpartisan campaign with the aim of increasing youth and student voter engagement and just making sure that we're driving up political participation as much as we can. Even when maybe a student can't necessarily vote, whether that's because they're from out of country or they don't meet the minimum requirements, we still feel that it's important to be engaged civically and to understand the people that are representing you to all levels of government. So with that, we'll be running various events, booths around campus, and different information sessions for students and anyone else to learn more about participating in the election, whether that's how to vote, where to vote, how to register, voting locations, or anything else that we can help you with. So we'll be having different events, information, engagement, and that's kind of the goals of these campaigns. We'll be collecting pledges alongside Acadia Students' Union, Cape Breton University, Dalhousie, SMU, and we're doing a bit of a competition. So students, if you want to try and beat Acadia, hint, hint, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, we'd love for you to pledge. You can do that at studentsns.nationbuilder.ca. Lastly, make sure you keep an eye on our Instagram for more event info, voter engagement info, and also we'll be posting some jobs on behalf of Elections Nova Scotia for students to potentially take on. So with that, let's get to the main event tonight. Thank you so much. Please stay informed, ask questions, and let's get out the vote. Thank you so much, everyone.
All right, so thank you so much for joining us tonight. My name is Rebecca Wallace. I am an assistant professor in the Department of Political Science and a Mulroney Research Chair in the Mulroney Institute. And I'm very thrilled to be here tonight. This has been, I would describe this as a month that's like the Super Bowl for political scientists. We've had a lot of elections going on, and we're really keen to partner on this event with the Student Union. I think this has been an awesome opportunity for us to participate in the democratic process today. So before we start into the debate, I do want to go through some housekeeping items. Before we introduce the candidates, we'll talk a bit about the format here for tonight. So the game plan is that we will address a number of questions, 6 questions specifically, that are meant to showcase platforms across a wide array of issues. Our goal here is to cover a lot of ground in an important debate and to make sure that we cover a lot of issues. So the questions were fielded in advance. We want to thank those who participated in this process. We received some really excellent submissions, and admittedly, it was very difficult to whittle this list down to a few key questions. We think we have a good representative sample, so we hope that you enjoy the choices we have here tonight. The format is that each candidate will have 5 minutes to introduce themselves. We'll move through a series of 6 questions, and each candidate will have 3 minutes to answer those questions. The idea here is that we'll keep a good pace and, again, cover a wide breadth of issues. And following those 6 questions, each of you will have 5 minutes for closing remarks. We'll rotate through on an alphabetical basis, so everyone will get a chance to go first at a question and last. And again, the idea here is that, like our mayoral debate, this is intended to be a non-adversarial event. Really, our focus here is ensuring that people can get a good perspective on your platforms and to make sure that we set a good example for students, many of whom this will be their first election, on what we can do here around, producing civil discourse, as Dr. Harling-Stocker mentioned. So, on that note, we do have some expectations of audience members. The expectation tonight is that you will be respectful of all candidates. That means that you need to sit and observe and participate. There will be no Q&A. We also do not want anyone to heckle or interject, and we reserve the right to remove anybody who does. So please don't put us in that position. Make sure that you are here to attend and to listen, and again, to give everybody your full attention. In order to keep flow, we ask that we also refrain from clapping between questions. We're going to just hold that right until the end, and at the end you can give a good enthusiastic cheer. So, as I said, that is our game plan, but please be respectful of all candidates. This is not an easy thing for candidates to do. I applaud you all for putting yourselves out here, so again, give them your respect. Now, as for candidates, we also have some expectations of you. So, in particular, we want to make sure that we are respectful of one another and that we respect the timelines for tonight. We will have someone timing in front who will indicate when you have 1 minute remaining and when your time is up. And when your time is up, it is up. So please ensure that you finish up your sentence and again, end your statement at that point. There will be no interjections in one another's responses as well, so please, again, be respectful of your fellow candidates. Civil discourse is really the motto for the night, okay? Now, on that note, getting that kind of business out of the way, does anybody have any questions? We're feeling okay about this? All right, then let's start into the fun stuff. So I am happy to introduce each of our candidates here. I'll go through our bios in alphabetical order. So, starting with John David McIsaac. John David McIsaac is the Nova Scotia NDP's candidate for Antigonish. Born and raised in Antigonish, he is a master mariner with over 35 years in various areas of the offshore and merchant marine. Since 2016, he has been a faculty member at the Nova Scotia Nautical Institute Marine Technology Program at the NSCC in Port Hawkesbury. He has also been a volunteer with a variety of service organizations, including chair of the board of directors for the Strait of Canso Superport Corporation, and in the community, the annual street canvass for the CACL and the Antigonish Highland Games. He still goes to the Arctic every summer as a polar ice navigator for the resupply operation of Canada's North Warning Stations in the Western Canadian Arctic. The Antigonish movement is deeply embedded in John David, as his mother was on the original staff of the Coady Institute. He firmly believes in the principles of cooperatives as solutions to housing and developing rural enterprise. He has a degree in economics from StFX, which has given him deep insight into the solutions of the challenges that people face today. John David has always given a hand or contributed when asked to do so. This is why he is running in this election, to work for the people that need the help the most. So, on to Sheila. Sheila Sears is the Liberal candidate for Antigonish. She was a primary healthcare and public health leader in Nova Scotia from 2003 until her retirement. Sheila has worked as a nurse, health leader, and public health advisor in all of Canada's provinces and territories, except Quebec, Central America, the Middle East, and Sri Lanka, with numerous First Nations. Her 36 years of nursing practice and career decision have been influenced by the principles of social justice and population health. Sheila was a founding member of SAFE, the Syrian Antigonish Families Embrace Society, a volunteer-run settlement agreement holder assisting new Syrian Canadians fleeing war and displacement to settle safely in Canada and make Antigonish their new home. Sheila was a member of the SAFE Steering Committee and a volunteer treasurer for the organization from 2015 to 2023. Until recently, she was a volunteer with Dying with Dignity Canada. Sheila served as a director on the board of Nova Scotia Health Authority and chaired the public engagement subcommittee of the board. In the past, she has been on the boards of Kids First Family Resource Centers and the Antigonish Chamber of Commerce, as well as Antigonish Regional Development Authority. She is a former basketball player and coach to run for the seat at the provincial table in 2021. Michelle is a registered nurse, having worked in acute care, critical care, public health, young health, and long-term care, and she was a long-term care administrator prior to her election to the legislature. Michelle was elected to the Nova Scotia House of Assembly as the MLA for Antigonish in 2021. Since then, she has served as a key member of Premier Houston's cabinet, as she was appointed Minister of Health and Wellness, and the Minister responsible for the Office of Healthcare Professional Recruitment. In 2024, she was also appointed as the Minister responsible for Healthcare Infrastructure and Development. So, welcome to all of our candidates, and thank you again for agreeing to participate in tonight's forum. We'll dive into our first question here, which is, this election was called several months ahead of the fixed election date for the province. As Nova Scotians prepare to head to the polls, what do you believe are the critical or defining issues in this election? And we will turn to Sheila first for our question. Oh, sorry, oh my gosh, we need opening statements. What am I doing? Thank you, Anna's keeping me on track here. Oh my gosh, sorry, okay. I should have written that in. Let's start with opening statements, and we'll start here with John David. Thank you.
Can you hear me now? All right, thank you. Okay, so once again, thanks everyone for coming here tonight. I want to thank the Political Science Department and the Student Union for hosting this event. And thank you to the other candidates for being here tonight to share their ideas. As many of you know, through the introduction, I am local. I was born and raised and educated here. I have my degree from economics. But when I left this university, my ambition was to see the world. So that's why I ended up going into the marine exploration business and ended up as a master mariner. But tonight, we are talking about issues around healthcare, housing, and other important issues, affordability, education, and poverty reduction. In 2021, Nova Scotians rejected the Nova Scotia Liberal Party and gave the Conservatives a 4-year mandate to do better. A good majority, in fact. Now, with 7 months still to go in their mandate, we are called to an unnecessary election, a snap election which gives the incumbent party some certain advantages, such as being ready to go with their campaign signs, because you won't see mine out there because mine are still coming from the printer. But you will see them, assure me. They will be getting out there. The federal party is high in the polls. The provincial party, high on the polls. I think this is a pretty obvious reason why Tim Houston wants to call an election today. But is it hard to come up with a reason for the public interest? I think so. I can't think of anything that would be, shall we say, in the public interest of calling this early. Yet somehow they felt it was important to cast aside their own commitment to a fixed election date, a measure that materially improves the democratic process of this government and the process of governments everywhere. Some will say that politics is just politics. You can't expect much more from politicians. They always break their word. Well, the view that politics is inherently cutthroat and all politicians and parties can be counted on for self-interest before principle is a big part of what's threatening democracy today. This is part of the reason why the younger generation feel disenfranchised and do not have much faith in the democratic system. Surely governing should be about public service, should include defending our democratic system. And with Remembrance Day coming up, I think we should remember that long ago, not so long ago, our ancestors fought and died to defend democracy. The dismissal of democratic process reflects Tim Houston's attitude, which breaks faith with those who made that sacrifice to defend our democratic system. When you cast your ballots, voters serve the Conservatives the rebuke they deserve for that betrayal. Let me just say that all this election is unnecessary. Eventually it would be, but I want to say that under the leadership of Claudia Chender, we did hold the Houston government to the issues, to work hard and make sure that we could make sure that they would face the people and give us a reasonable amount of governance. But the legacy so far has been broken promises, healthcare, housing costs, affordable living. The Coastal Protection Act is a particularly close one to my heart, and of course the fixed election date. These broken promises are Houston's legacy. The NDP has been working to make life better for all Nova Scotians, and I'm looking forward to talking to you more about that this evening. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, and we'll turn it over to Sheila Sears.
Hello. Good evening. I'm going to try that again, closer. Good evening. Thank you to the Mulroney Center, the StFX Students Union, and the university for hosting this debate. Thank you also to my fellow candidates and to all of you for coming out tonight on this Wednesday when I'm sure you have other things to do, but this is going to be exciting. I'm Sheila, a retired nurse with over 30 years of experience in public health. My career has taken me across Canada and internationally, and I've seen firsthand the issues that communities face when essential services are out of reach. Here in Antigonish, too many families are feeling the pressure of rising costs in every aspect of life, whether it's the price of housing, groceries, or post-secondary education. That's why I'm running in this election, to bring a strong voice for Antigonish that not only understands these struggles, but is committed to addressing them with practical solutions. Affordability is at the heart of this campaign, and it must be our priority. Families deserve a chance to live with dignity and security, not struggling to keep a roof over their heads. I am committed to policies that will increase housing availability and support initiatives to bring down the cost of living for working families and the middle class. From reducing the HST by 2% to programs that make a home achievable for everyone in our community. This isn't just about numbers. It's about ensuring that every resident has a place they can call home without sacrificing the basic necessities. Finally, we must address the elephant in the room. The worsening crisis in our healthcare system, long wait times, double the number of Nova Scotians without a family doctor, and a shortage of healthcare professionals mean that many people are waiting too long to get the care they need. As someone who's spent decades in public health, I know we can do better. I'm committed to improving physician recruitment and retention, support for healthcare workers, and stronger incentives to keep them here. As your Liberal candidate, we're committed to building and expanding 40 collaborative care centers across the province. Together, we can build a future where affordability, housing, and better access to health care are not privileges for the few, but the backbone of a thriving, supportive community we call Antigonish. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheila, and we'll turn it over to Michelle.
Good evening, everyone. So my name is Michelle Thompson. Like Sheila, I'm a registered nurse. I am originally from Cape Breton. I moved here when I was 18 years old to go to St. Martha's School of Nursing, and met my husband Darren my second year of nursing school. And other than a few years when we lived in Scotland while Darren pursued his education, I have lived here since I've been 18 years old. So I was elected in 2021. Tim Houston ran on a platform singularly focused on the will to fix healthcare. And I ran in 2021 because I was increasingly discouraged by the state of healthcare. At the time, I had spent about 5 years as the administrator at R.K. Macdonald Nursing Home, and over that period of time had seen a variety of struggles in terms of funding. We had a number of budget reductions to long-term care facilities. It certainly resulted in our ability to deliver care. And so I was very frustrated. We had a lot of solutions within the sector, and we just really were not able to permeate government in any way to be able to share or help. And I say that all the time. I would have helped from there if I had been given the opportunity, because I really was passionate about the care that we delivered there. Our workforce was really struggling. We couldn't find folks to work. The pay was not adequate to reflect the value of the work that was done to care for residents living in long-term care. And I also felt the angst of my colleagues across the system because I had worked in so many places. So I did run for Tim Houston. People should say you should always be careful for what you wish for, because here I was, and then in 2021 was appointed as Minister of Health. And it was quite a daunting task. But there are things about that I'm incredibly proud and happy that we did. The first thing we did was we toured this province and we talked to healthcare workers. And so for the first time in my career, there is a plan for healthcare built on the voices of healthcare workers across this province who helped informed action for health. And we were in a very deep hole, is what I would say. So there have been a number of things, and I think we'll have an opportunity to talk about some of the changes and the improvements that have been made. Our workforce is returning. We've settled competitive contracts. We've done a number of things to support modernizing our healthcare system. So as we got older and we changed and we became more complex, our healthcare system stayed static and actually had resources extracted as a result of some of the budgetary cuts that happened across all governments over the last 30 years. So I ran to represent Antigonish as well. I love my community. As I said, I've been here for a long time. I'm not very athletic. I didn't often coach, but I often sat on the boards of the places where my kids played. Darren did the coaching. I did the bean counting sometimes, or the work behind the scenes, and tried to volunteer and be present in my community in a number of ways. So it really is a privilege for me to sit here tonight, having served as MLA for Antigonish for the last 3.5 years. I've learned a lot about the community. I've learned a lot about local governance, federal governance, and the relationship that we all hold together. I really have learned a lot about myself in the process as well. So, I believe that Tim Houston has a plan. He's very action-oriented. He has a mantra. It's called more, faster, and he means it. He tells a story all the time that when we're no longer in government, will anybody care? And what will our legacy be? And so we have invested in communities across this province, and certainly Antigonish has benefited. We've been able to invest in our local amenities. We've been able to invest in healthcare. And there's been a number of different things that I hope I'll have the opportunity to talk about. So thank you for coming. Thank you to the Students' Union and Mulroney Institute for having us tonight, and I look forward to the discussion and the opportunity to talk with my colleagues as the evening progresses. So thank you.
Awesome. All right, so thank you all for your introductions. And now, for real this time, the first question. So, as we heard, this election was called several months ahead of the fixed election date for the province. As Nova Scotians prepare to head to the polls, what do you believe are the critical or defining issues in this election? And we will start with Sheila.
Thank you. Tim Houston's very first law was a fixed election date, July 15th, 2025. He promised all of us a reliable, guaranteed date for future elections. He promised no leader in the future would dare break the new law for fear of upsetting the voters. Yet this is one of the many promises he has broken, along with fixing healthcare, fixing housing, and fixing our roads. A liberal government is committed to honoring the fixed election dates. We will strengthen the fixed election date legislation so that any governing party that breaks the law to call an early election must pay a $250,000 fine.
Okay, and we'll turn it over then to Michelle.
Yes.
Awesome. You're done. Okay, good evening again, everyone. So in terms of the timing of the election, it certainly wasn't an easy decision for us to make as government. In 2021, we did have a mandate to fix healthcare, and we got a very strong mandate from Nova Scotians to do that. And certainly that was reflected in the polls and the seats that we held. And during this our tenure, there have been generational investments in healthcare and significant changes to the system. And I acknowledge that there's more to do. However, we do feel that we've made good foundational progress. Things have changed quite markedly to some degree in our communities, and affordability really is a significant issue that many Nova Scotians are facing, and I actually think it is the key issue that we'll be facing in the provincial election. So as we come around the corner of this calendar year, we're actually entering into a new tax year for individuals, and we're also entering the last quarter of our fiscal year. So from January to March 31st is the last quarter, which is when budgetary planning happens in government. So we have been looking at a number of ways in which we can approach affordability. And in the budget cycle, the longer we wait to be able to implement new policies, the further into the next fiscal year we will be able to implement. So those are really some of the reasons that prompted us to consider going early. The other thing that I will tell you is that at times our relationship with the federal government can be strained. And we have heard recently, more often than not, that when we go to Ottawa about certain issues that are very pressing for Nova Scotians, we have been told that this is election rhetoric. And so we've chosen to go to the polls to get a mandate from Nova Scotians because there are things that are very pressing in our province that need to be addressed, and we need our federal counterparts to do that with us. So one of those issues is the illegal fishery. So we have significant issues in our province with illegal fisheries, and we need to be able to address those together. We also have to talk about the Chignecto Isthmus, the Abbotsford in Windsor, which we need to complete that highway. And so these are issues that are very pressing for us, and we want to go to the federal government and show them that we have a mandate, that we are not here just for 7 more months, that these are issues that are pressing, and that we are here as government in order to work on these issues and get them settled for Nova Scotians.
All right, and we'll turn it over to John David.
Yeah, why are we having this election now? Again, as we said, Tim Houston has broken the first promise that he made. As Michelle was saying, he says things have changed since 2021. Well, what's changed? They still have a majority. The fact that the federal and the provincial Conservatives are well ahead in the polls, that's changed. He's in a better position to negotiate with Ottawa for funding. Well, that huge pot of money in Ottawa has been sitting there for over a year. So he was in a majority a year ago, so why are we still negotiating when all he had to do was sign up for the housing benefit or for any of the other money that's waiting in Ottawa that's been there for over a year? The Premier is trying to link the provincial Liberals to the unpopularity of the federal Liberals with the carbon tax, and yet he still maintains his distance from the extremism of Pierre Poilievre represents. The Premier had a dust-up with Churchill over this topic the week before the election was called. When I heard that, I said to myself in Gaelic, there's an election coming. I will address this when we talk about healthcare, housing, and affordability in the next set of questions. But I want to preface this with a general comment about my respective opponents' parties. Traditionally, the Conservative government was considered fiscally prudent, while the Liberals were considered to be the party that supported spending on social programs. Although these days that role has reversed with the recent governments. Why? Well, the Liberals were so tight-fisted under McNeil that Conservatives had no choice but to spend money to bring us back into a reasonable place where we could support the services and policies that support the people. If the New Democratic Party were elected, we would certainly ensure that the election date would be followed and maintained. You can trust the NDP will consider all of these policies and will follow through on them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And we will move on to our second question. Healthcare was a defining issue in the 2021 Nova Scotian election, particularly amidst the COVID-19 pandemic. As of June 2024, there are 160,234 Nova Scotians on the family physician waitlist. How would you describe the state of healthcare in our province, and what are your key objectives when it comes to addressing the challenges pertaining to primary care? And we will start with Michelle on this question.
Thank you. Certainly over the last number of years, we have had a significant investment in healthcare in a variety of different ways. So one of the reasons or the things that is driving our Need a Family Practice Registry is an aging population. So not only are we aging in Nova Scotia as a demographic, although we do have some immigration that's brought our age down by about 7 months, which is the first time in a long time, we are still aging. We have a lot of folks who are going through the system. That also includes our physicians. So our physicians are aging as well and reaching an age of retirement. And unfortunately, that was not planned for. In the 90s, I'm 52, if you'll notice, there were very few healthcare workers in their early 50s, early to mid 50s, because at the time when I graduated, there was no work for nurses, and there was actually no work for physicians. And so over time, our workforce has eroded, and we haven't been able to keep up. So we have heavily invested in training for healthcare workers across the spectrum. Nurses, physicians, we've introduced new designations like physician assistants, and we've waived tuition for certain designations in order for us to increase the workforce as well as pay. In terms of the Need a Family Practice Registry, when we formed government, it was a list, and people put their name on the list, but it in fact was not managed. We now have a registry, so if any of you folks are on the registry, you've been asked to update your information, and we are now managing the list. And when new physicians come in, or nurse practitioners, we actually take individuals off of the registry and assign them to patients so that physicians and nurse practitioners have panels. We believe strongly in the health home model and able to deliver a collaborative care center, which will have 29 healthcare professionals working out of that space caring for us. So in the future, we'll actually be attached to a health home versus a healthcare provider. This health home will have a number of individuals there across different disciplines who will give you your care. You won't necessarily see a physician for everything, but there will be allied healthcare professionals there, nurses, dietitians, social workers, etc., who will help support you. And in the event that that primary care provider that you have moves or changes, you still will be attached to the health home. So I have more to say about that, but I will say we're working a bit with Dr. Jane Philpott, who was the former federal health minister, and I would encourage anyone that's interested to read her book called Health for All. And she really clearly defines the health home and how we actually attach people to these facilities by postal codes, similarly to the way that we attach people to schools when they move into a province or community. So all to say, there's more work to do, but I'm confident in our plan. We have a number of collaborative care centers, and we will continue to build on that model. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. We'll turn it over to John David.
Yeah, healthcare. It's a crisis, that's for sure. Mostly because of the tight-fisted attitude of Stephen McNeil when he fought with the nurses, the poor pay that he offered paramedics and other health professionals during his tenure. So as I said, the Conservatives had no choice but to catch up, as they were among the poorest paid in the country. Michelle has done some good work with collaborative model, although there's only one clinic so far, and thank you, it's in Antigonish. But I want to point out that it was under the NDP government of Darrell Dexter that the first collaborative health care center was established. So the NDP plan on establishing 15 new centers over each year of the next 3 years that they are going to be in government. The PEI have planned to have 17 of these built in the near future. But at present, we have Nova Scotians left to navigate through a band-aid solutions of mobile clinics, apps, only to access primary care from doctors and nurses practitioners that are unfamiliar with their medical history. However, also building new facilities will only help if we can attract new people to this community. This November, despite all the money spent in recruiting, we have only 10 new family doctors arrive in Nova Scotia this year. Why? Yeah, that's family doctors. Lots of other specialists, but only 10 family doctors. New doctors coming out of school have a huge debt. If we don't compete with other jurisdictions, they won't come here. The fee-for-service model does not work for doctors or their patients. I hear many people tell me that doctors will give them only 15 minutes and only deal with one issue. And then if you have another issue, well, you better book another appointment. Well, I'm sure that most issues are more complex and that you need to be able to have more time. So if we had a salary where it didn't matter how long you had to sit with that doctor, you would get the information and the help that you needed. That is the key to having holistic health solutions. So we are looking at making sure that determinants of health will help us prevent people from needing a doctor in the first place, and also giving them the information and knowledge they need so that they will be better, have better lives, and be healthier going forward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll turn it over to Sheila.
Thank you. Under Tim Houston, twice as many Nova Scotians now lack a family doctor. In Antigonish, that's 1,500 people who are on the waiting list, desperate for a physician. There were only 40 net new nurse practitioners hired last year. That's one new nurse practitioner for 25,000 people. He has not invested in hiring additional midwives. We do need to do more to recruit and retain doctors, nurses, and nurse practitioners. 36% of doctors who left Nova Scotia said that Nova Scotia Health could have persuaded them to stay. So, what would a Liberal government do? We would implement a collaborative care model by building and expanding 40 collaborative health care clinics in the province. We will increase financial incentives for physicians and allied health professionals who commit to working at the collaborative health clinics for a minimum of 5 years. We would address skyrocketing wait lists by expanding the number of training positions for family physicians and accelerating pathways for international medical students, reducing the administrative burden for family physicians, and we will double the annual funding to get more physician assistants trained and able to provide health care. Currently, Nova Scotia only has 19 of them. With regards to preventative health care, we need to expand early screening programs such as diabetes, cancer, and heart disease. We need to improve access to recreation, trails, projects. There'll be no HST on gym memberships. Pilot project for free recreation access, and implement anti-poverty measures as healthcare. We'll also create a Minister of Women's Health in government, implement a public health approach towards stopping the epidemic of intimate partner violence, free menstrual products in all provincial buildings, and reestablish the Atlantic Center of Excellence for Women's Health to address current gaps, enhance research on women's health.
Awesome. Thank you. So, our third question is on climate change. Climate change is undoubtedly exerting an impact on our province. From forest fires to hurricanes and record-breaking snowstorms in the past 2 years alone, we've seen a range of climate-related emergencies. What are your primary goals for dealing with climate change in Nova Scotia? And on this question, we will start with John David.
Yes, the environment and climate change. I went first to the Arctic in the Beaufort Sea doing surveys in 1981, where we were looking at the ice maps in 1981. And I'm going to the Arctic now as a navigator in the polar regions, and I can tell you there's a tremendous change that's happened up there. I've seen emaciated polar bears up in Svalbard because the polar ice pack was 50 miles away from where that bear and his cub were trying to find a bite to eat. So I know that climate change is very real, and we are experiencing it here. We saw wildfires in Nova Scotia, and we see the storms that have wrecked some of our forest and knocked down lots of infrastructure. So it's the ominous shadow that raises its head when we see these fires and storms across the country and the world. The immediate challenge with so much immediate challenges facing people around healthcare and affordability, the environment seems to have taken a back seat. Well, it's still there, and we have seen where the sniping between Tim and Zach over the carbon tax confirms this. This dust-up, as I said, was a sure sign that there's an election coming. The reality is that industry has been allowed to externalize the costs related to pollution they produce, whether you refer to greenhouse gases, water supply, or habitat destruction. This borrowing from Mother Nature's bank of infinite resources is coming to an end. Climate change we are witnessing is the interest being charged on all that pollution, and it's going up every year. Economists will compare the national debt to GDP. It's the same analogy. We are past the point of sustainability, and we're closing in on the limit we can borrow from Mother Nature. The Coastal Protection Act is a real example of the disregard the Conservatives have for our coastal communities and the environment in general. The NDP will ensure that the Coastal Protection Act is made into law and that all our policies related to development are sustainable and will protect the environment and make sure that we have a future for our children and grandchildren. Tim Houston says he stands up for all Nova Scotians, but he sits down in the back room to make deals with the fat cats over development. Thank you.
Thank you, John David. We'll turn it over to Sheila.
Thank you. Climate change is here, and it's a very serious predicament that we have in our planet. The Liberal government introduced the Coastal Protection Act when they were in government, and all parties supported it, including the Houston Conservatives. Now in government, Tim Houston refuses to proclaim that act to defend our Nova Scotia coastline. Instead, he's bowing to private developers. A Liberal government will proclaim the Coastal Protection Act. We will implement the required regulations across the province and work with municipalities to transition any existing coastal protection action plans into one unified set of rules. With regards to the carbon tax, we will eliminate the carbon tax. We will bring back the cap and trade system. The Stephen McNeil Liberal government had an effective cap and trade system. It worked and it cost less. Premier Houston scrapped it without a plan and did nothing to replace it. That caused the federal carbon tax to apply. We'll reintroduce the cap and trade system that will lower your gas prices and also hold large industrial polluters accountable. The carbon tax is not a Liberal tax. It's the price that we're all paying for Tim Houston's partisan ego. Don't fall for the lies.
Thank you, Sheila, and we'll turn it over to Michelle.
Okay. So I want to reassure folks that Nova Scotia is actually a leader in Canada in climate change. In 2021, we passed legislation called the Environmental Goals and Climate Change Reduction Act. We call it EGCRA for short. So the act actually legislates and mandates not only actions but targets that we need to reach as a province. So that would include reducing greenhouse gas emissions by 53% over 2005 levels by 2030, to be net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2050. 80% of the province's electricity generation needs to be from renewable sources by 2030. We will phase out coal by 2030. 20% land and water mass protection by 2030, and active transportation strategies, just as a few things as highlights out of that legislation. So in relation to the carbon tax is punishing for rural communities. It does not decarbonize. The places that we drive to in rural communities do not get any closer when we pay a tax. And the tax, in fact, is driving some of the affordability issues that we're seeing. We know that everything we get is shipped here, our food, our goods, our services, etc. And as a result, costs are being driven up. So the carbon tax, the cap and trade system was actually very time limited, and under no circumstances was that going to be extended. We went to Ottawa on several occasions in regards to that cap and trade system, and in fact it was confirmed in the legislature by Brendan McGuire, who crossed the floor, that the Liberal government at the time knew that that was not going to be an option, a cap and trade system going forward. So we've sent better than a carbon tax plan to the feds to talk to them about the actions that we're taking, legislated targets, and we have a number of plans. So the Coastal Protection Action Plan is there, the Nova Scotia Climate Change Plan, the Clean Power Plan, and the Nova Scotia Green Hydrogen Action Plan. So I want to assure people that those are available online, and I know that there are some of you I'm talking to on the doorsteps that are very interested in that. And the last thing I'll say, just in terms of the climate, or in terms of the Coastal Protection Act, we have worked with municipalities. Sometimes we defend against the ocean, sometimes we attack, and we have to do what's best locally. We have a diverse coastline, and we feel with the zoning and with the building permits that happen in the municipal purview, that it's important that we provide resources and that we work in local communities rather than a blanket legislation that may be not applicable to all communities based on the situation that they're in.
All right, thank you, Michelle. So our next question. Recent changes to the funding of public universities in Nova Scotia have led to a number of questions about the future of post-secondary education in the province. How will you support universities and students, and specifically, how will you support StFX? And we will start with Sheila on this question.
Let's talk about StFX. Over 5,200 full-time and part-time students are enrolled here, and they contribute $53 million in tuition each year. StFX pays out more than $55 million a year just in salaries to their full and part-time employees, money which supports our local economy. So for the life of me, I cannot understand why any government would give $25 million to St. Mary's University for a healthcare program that doesn't exist based on a one-page proposal. That $25 million could have gone a long way to expanding the School of Nursing or the Centre for Rural Health Innovation right here at StFX. To make matters worse, the current government threatens to withhold some of the operating funds for StFX unless it meets various targets, some of which are beyond the university's control. If the government withholds funding, tuition fees will have to rise. That hurts students, some of whom may choose to study elsewhere. That in turn hurts StFX and our local economy. StFX students, faculty, and staff need a strong voice to advocate for them, not someone who gives money to other universities with no strings attached.
Okay, thank you, Sheila. We'll turn it over to Michelle.
So thank you. So in regards to the university funding, we know that it has been a difficult period of time. We certainly have worked very hard with local universities around healthcare in particular. We have asked universities to align with the provincial priorities, not only with healthcare, but with other areas as well. And we've asked them to look at the ways in which they develop and graduate students and their preparation for workforce is what I would say. So the tuition has been capped for students at universities at 2%. And so we've done that because we know that it is becoming difficult at times for students. We'd actually invested $37.4 million in StFX at the Rural Health Institute, which is really looking at the determinants of health and understanding health the things that affect health in rural Nova Scotia, and it will bring innovators together. It will bring researchers, it will bring clinicians, it will bring innovators, and it will provide an opportunity for StFX to build on the work that it has always done with the Antigonish movement. The National Collaborating Centre for the Determinants of Health is here, and it creates a bit of an ecosystem around the work that's happening, particularly for rural health in our province. We have asked universities as well to look at the degree process and understand whether there are ways in which we can shorten that period of time that students are in school. At the same time that we invested in StFX, $37.4 million, we also created a secondary medical campus at Cape Breton University that will graduate 30 physicians annually. The first class will start in September of 2025, and we did work with SMU. There is a gaping hole in data analytics in healthcare. So not only do we not necessarily always understand how people are utilizing the system, how do you then make decisions about where money goes? How do you know how to spend money if you don't have the data to support it? And healthcare workers are data analysts now. We depend on them heavily. And so we have invested in St. Mary's University to build that opportunity for people to work in health data, work with health economists in order for us to better understand. Money is not the only thing that is going to fix healthcare. We need to understand utilization, we need to understand populations, and we need to understand where the money is going. So there are ways that we are investing in universities. The universities are a huge selling point as we grow our economy because of the pipeline of talent that our universities put into the economy and into the workforce. So I want to assure people we are determined to work with universities, and we will continue to do that. And I will certainly say StFX has been a tremendous partner for us, particularly in healthcare over the last 3.5 years.
Okay, thank you, Michelle. And we'll turn it over to John David.
Yeah, folks, I took a leave of absence from
The microphone.
yes. I took a leave of absence from the Nova Scotia Community College where I've been working, but the day before I left, the last day, the Vice President came down and had a meeting with faculty and was explaining the relationship between the community college and the Department of Education, expressing how the Department of Education was putting conditions on the funding, and the focus was razor sharp on healthcare and the building trades, whereas in any other program basically was left to fend itself. As I said, I'm in the marine training program, and we're trying to get programs expanded so that we can get our officers trained up to be more than just basic mates. There's a program where to become a chief officer, and they will not put any money into that program. And we've got 4 years, 5 years of graduates that are waiting to get that second level, and the government is just not cooperating. But anyway, getting back to funding for the universities and StFX in particular, through 2010 to 2013, when the provincial NDP were in government, the operating grant for StFX was at 47 to 50% of their operating revenue. All right? So by the end of the first term of the Liberals, that had dropped to 31%. And that's basically where it stayed until the Conservatives came into power. Presently, we're at 29% of StFX's operating revenue. So there certainly has been a decline in the support from the provincial government, right? Now they're talking the operating grant increase during the NDP's budget by 10% from $31 to $35 million. There hasn't been any larger increase ever since. So right now we're talking about a Conservative increase of 1%, maybe 3%, but with conditions. Conditions that are based on following the government's needs, aka levers that will force the government to be dictating the terms. They've added a 10% holdback to Dalhousie if they don't enroll more health training. So they are willing to extort the universities to follow their mandate. So I want to say that the NDP government will certainly go back to supporting the university and giving them the money they need to make sure that programs, not only in healthcare, but in all the programs that people want to pursue in their careers, will be available at a reasonable price.
Thank you. On to our next question. Many Nova Scotians are in a tough situation when it comes to finding safe, affordable housing. The town and county of Antigonish face particular challenges with this issue as both a rural community and a university town. How will you address the housing crisis in Antigonish, accounting for the needs of the county and town residents, as well as the student population? And we'll start with Michelle on this question.
Great, thank you. So certainly housing has become a major issue, not just here, but across the province. So locally, we've been very pleased to be able to partner with Antigonish Affordable Housing, and through a program where we have pieces of property that are not required or surplus property, we were able to, it was identified by Antigonish Affordable Housing that just adjacent to their current property on Appleseed, there was such a property, and so we were able to transition that property to them, and happy that the expansion of 17 new units will start there. We've also been able to give Antigonish Affordable Housing $2.7 million of a forgivable loan in collaboration with funds as well from the federal government in order to expand that project. We've also looked at investments to extend the infrastructure. So one of the other ways that we've invested is to extend water lines out the 337, so out past the hospital, and also in St. Joseph's to support more building development. And we've also provided just over $2.4 million to the town of Antigonish to address issues that they're facing with the sewer. We know that there's significant amount of growth that's happening in the fringe, and so we know that the development is approved in the county, but reliant on the town infrastructure in order for those projects to move forward and be successful. And so as a partner, we want to be able to work with both municipalities to fund any infrastructure, support the funding of that infrastructure so that our community can grow. We've done other things as well to support affordable housing. So we have a really great program called the Secondary and Backyard Suite Program. And some folks in Antigonish have taken advantage of that. So if you have a property, you can build a portion onto the home or on the property itself with a rebate of up to $40,000 depending on the build in order to house a child, a parent, etc., someone in your family. And we're also looking at different ways that we can find public housing and support individuals in moving, making sure that people are not overhoused or underhoused. So sometimes we have families living in a 1 or 2 bedroom apartment, and we have single individuals who are living in a 3 or 4 bedroom apartment because their families have grown. So very compassionately, we're working with those families to make sure that we right size the housing that they're living in order to support people. So it's not going to be one thing. There's a number of other programs that are happening, but we need to work in community with our municipal counterparts, with not-for-profits, as well as our federal counterparts in order to build the housing supply and make sure that there's a home for everyone regardless of income, that it's available to them.
Okay, thank you, Michelle. We'll turn it over to John David.
Housing and affordability are very closely linked. An economist will tell you you should not be spending more than 30% of your gross income on your rent or mortgage. The present Canada-Nova Scotia targeted housing benefit was raised to 50%, but then lowered to 40% of your income. This still makes for very hard choices for people between making the decision between food or your rent, right? Which is why so many children are going to school hungry. Sean Fraser told the head of affordable housing in Antigonish, Colleen Cameron, who many of you know, many months ago that there was a big pot of money in Ottawa just waiting for Nova Scotia to sign up. In fact, $1.5 billion in co-op housing program. Meanwhile, the Premier would rather play politics rather than help those most in need of a roof over their head. I would bring a focus to this co-op housing program. The Antigonish movement was built on that type of program. The federal budget, as I said, from 2022 and 23 has that money waiting, and we would expand co-op rental housing. It's the largest investment in 30 years that the federal government has offered. This will be my focus on improving the supply side of affordable housing, and will reduce the demand side and reduce the leverage developers now have. It would only take 10% on the supply side to make the market adjust to make landlords, make their market, their rent increases more affordable. Presently, the 5% increase or cap is a bit less than, a bit more than we would have a 2.5% rent increase and close the loopholes around the fixed term leases. That is in the NDP platform. So, as I said, the rent is very high in Halifax. It's very high in Antigonish. There's about 50 people in Antigonish that are almost homeless. Again, the NDP have a rent subsidy that would help family incomes of less than $70,000. And so we are still waiting for money to be brought into the community for that support. And I just want to make a thank you to the local nonprofit, A Roof Over Your Head, who have worked very hard to help the homeless in this community. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, John David. We'll turn it over to Sheila.
Thank you. I have a friend who's a teacher in HRM, and we have heard a lot about students acting out at school. Some of these kids don't even know if at the end of the month they're going to have a home to go back to. Some of these kids eat breakfast at food, they stuff their faces, they hoard food to take away. Some of them are so stressed, they are eating all day at school, and when they go home, the food that is left for their family goes to their little siblings. Affordability is a huge issue, and a liberal government would implement a package of tax cuts that would save the average family $3,000 a year. This includes cutting the HST by 2%, changes to income taxes so that Nova Scotia will have the lowest personal income taxes in Atlantic Canada. Liberals suggested a 2% HST cut earlier this year. We even introduced a bill in the House in September, but the government voted it down, saying it was a terrible idea. Now, just after calling an election, they've announced that they will indeed cut the HST, but only by 1%. A Liberal government will lower power bills by expanding the ability of renewable energy companies to provide power directly to Nova Scotians, expand the heat assistance rebate program to help more low-income Nova Scotians with their energy bills, saving them $1,000 a year, remove the HST on all groceries, and they have a goal to build 80,000 new homes by 2032.
Thank you, Sheila. All right, on to our final question. Nova Scotia was an early signatory of the Canada-wide Early Learning and Childcare Agreement and has seen a major increase in funding for childcare centres across the province. That said, Antigonish remains a childcare desert, and wait lists at all licensed childcare facilities have been so high in this area that most in the last year have stopped taking names on their wait lists. How will you address the childcare crisis in Antigonish and create more accessible, affordable childcare spaces for families in our area? And we will start with John David on this question.
Yeah, childcare is a huge challenge for families. In Nova Scotia, the New Democrats called out the Houston government to ban the childcare waitlist deposit fees to help families struggling to find care. 2 years ago, families were shocked to find that even though they had paid a deposit and waitlist fee, they would not find space for their children, meaning there would be a delay in their returning to work or leaving the workforce altogether. As Claudia Chender had said, childcare is an economic issue and it's a gendered issue. When there are not enough spaces for children to get their care, then there are barriers for accessing care. Many parents, or often women, are ended up having to stay home instead of returning to the workforce. If the Premier is really focused on economic growth and prosperity, he has to focus and make sure there is truly accessible childcare affordable for people. There is a federal program that is talking about $10 a day, and yet the province has not signed on for that program. At the end of this time, the deposits for children, the deposits at centers to inform parents only take a couple of weeks' notice, so they won't have a spot. That leads to unnecessary stress and creates a situation where people are delayed or have to quit their jobs. It shouldn't be this way. Families across Nova Scotia are struggling under the Houston government. Conservatives promised 1,500 new spots by the end of 2022, but at the end of that year, there are only 22 new spaces net during the first 2 years of their mandate. The Auditor General, Kim Adair, had called the Houston government out immediately to take action to set up a child and youth advocate, promising in this budget. This has not happened. The NDP will support more child spaces and support families that are struggling to find their children a safe place to live and get educated and have a healthy start towards their journey on the education. Thank you.
All right, thank you, and we'll turn it over to Sheila.
In 2017, the Liberal government introduced free universal pre-primary program, education for all 4-year-olds, saving parents $8,000 per year compared to daycare. In 2021, we negotiated a $605 million care funding agreement with the federal government. It would have created 9,500 new not-for-profit childcare spaces. It would have reduced fees for parents towards the $10 a day program. The Houston government fumbled the negotiation and implementation of the program, creating a crisis situation. While Houston's government had claimed that they created 5,000 new daycare spots, 50% of those were actually before and after school spaces, and over 1,000 spaces have closed. This means that there's only been 1,680 new full-time nonprofit daycare spaces have been opened by this government. The Liberal government now will expand our agreement with the federal government to allow private daycare operators to access funding and create more childcare spaces. Private centers such as the Red Apple right here in Antigonish, who have a deep roots in our community, but have faced immense obstacles within the current model. There are precedents for this in Alberta, New Brunswick, and Ontario. Nova Scotia deserves a fair deal. In 2021, we advocated for a universal free lunch program and are glad that we have one now here in Antigonish and across the province. Tim Houston wants to double our population, but we don't have enough childcare spaces, classrooms, hospital beds, or houses right now.
Thank you, and we'll turn it over to Michelle.
Great, thank you. So as mentioned before, in June or July of 2021, the former government did sign on to the Canada-wide Early Learning and Childcare Agreement. And at that time, it was negotiated that growth could only happen in the not-for-profit sector. And so we have about a 50-50 split. I think it's 55-45 in terms of profit and not-for-profit. And so repeatedly, we have gone to the federal government to ask that that agreement be reopened for us to renegotiate, because other jurisdictions have been able to have expansion in the for-profit area of daycare. But unfortunately, we have not been allowed to renegotiate, and it's called Me Too clause. So many of the negotiations included a Me Too clause, so that if another jurisdiction had a better deal, then those who signed on early as an early adopter would then be entitled to whatever those advancements were in other provinces. But unfortunately, that clause is not in our contract, and as a result, we really are not able to renegotiate that deal at this time. But we will continue to talk to the federal government about that. Antigonish really has had some struggles in terms of their ability to have daycare. The rate limiting step really is trying to find a space. It's been very, very difficult to find a facility that will be able to take children on. And it also, to some degree, we've also struggled a little bit with a provider in that not-for-profit space. So, I don't want to foreshadow too much, but I can say there's a lot of work that's happened, and I can't announce anything, but I do know that very soon we will hear more information about a subsidized daycare. We know, particularly in Antigonish, we've heard a lot from healthcare workers. There are some healthcare workers that actually can't go back to work because they can't secure childcare. So we know that we need extended time. We need to go into the evenings, and we also need to have some coverage on weekends. So that's some of the work that's happening. There's also been a couple of communities, not in Antigonish town proper, but outside, outlying communities, that have received some funding in order to do feasibility studies, so that children that live further out in the county, they have their own communities. Maybe there's an opportunity for us to expand and work with them to expand daycare closer to home. And so those talks are underway now. As I said, I don't know when they will be finished. I had hoped that perhaps there would be more information by the end of the year, but I suspect now it will be probably close to February before we have any announcements. But I want to assure people that we do feel that we've secured a space. We're looking at modular building, because sometimes when you're trying to retrofit and build, you get into all different kinds of materials that are no longer suitable, particularly for littles. So we may be looking at a modular investment, which has proven to be very successful in other areas. So I know it's been difficult for families, parents, and also grandparents. So we're on the case. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So that concludes our questions, and we'll move on to our closing remarks, and we'll begin with Sheila.
Thank you to tonight's organizers and to everyone here for engaging in this vital discussion about our community's future. As your Liberal candidate, I'm grateful for the opportunity to discuss key issues such as healthcare, climate change, support for our universities, housing affordability, election timing, and childcare. These are pressing concerns that affect us all, and it's essential that we address them with urgency and purpose. This election is about you and your family, tackling the rising costs of living, ensuring timely access to health care, and improving the conditions of our roads. Every day while I'm out canvassing, I hear from residents facing long waits for medical care, parents struggling to find affordable childcare, and families burdened by the increasing cost of housing. These issues impact our quality of life, and I'm committed to bringing practical, community-focused solutions that will ease these pressures and build a stronger foundation for future generations. As a nurse with 3 decades of experience in public health, I'm running because we need a government that will lead with empathy, recognizing that housing and affordability are basic rights. A government we can trust, not one that turns their back on their word and their own legislation. A government that is working for all Nova Scotians, not just the wealthy few. And finally, we need a government where each member of the House has a strong voice and can stand up for their community. These are the guiding values that have defined my entire career. I'm ready to stand up for Antigonish, and I'm here to ask for your support.
Thank you, Sheila. We'll turn it over to Michelle.
So thank you, everyone, for being so attentive, and thank my counterparts here this evening as well. So I say that having had the job for 3.5 years, it really has been a privilege, but this really feels like the biggest performance review and job interview that I've ever had in my entire life. It's a little bit of everything all rolled into one. So it really has been a privilege for me. I have learned a lot. I was fairly naive when I started, and I'm hoping there'll be a little bit of naivety left when the time comes and I'm done. But I want to come back. I feel that we have started some really great things as a government. Tim Houston is a person of action. He does believe in more faster. He expects a lot of himself, and he expects a lot of his caucus and cabinet. We have a very interesting team of individuals. A lot of us have life experience, have careers prior to coming into politics. I have a lot of counterparts who I can trust to really help me understand what's happening, both rural and urban. I'm very passionate about Antigonish. I think it's an absolutely wonderful place to raise a family. It has really been a wonderful place for me to live. I feel that healthcare is getting better. I know it's hard to sometimes get past all of the noise that we see in the media and things like that. But I would ask if folks have seen this, and it does outline some of the accomplishments that have happened in healthcare. And appreciating this is a very partisan event, I simply share this because I do want you to feel encouraged. I do want you to know that healthcare is improving. We were in a deep hole, and there's been a number of really good changes, and we have more to do. There's no question about that. I accept that. We accept those challenges, but I don't want people to feel discouraged. And I want you to know that we have the finest healthcare workers in the world. We have some technology and some researchers and clinicians who really are leading, and we get care from them on a daily basis. And so I do want to reassure folks, because I know it can feel discouraging. So, you know, as an action-oriented government, we are looking at our traditional industries and how we can support them. We're looking at innovation. We're looking at healthcare. We're looking at greening our grid and the opportunities that exist for us in economic development, especially around green energy. We have a motivated team. I'm a hard worker, and I try really hard to be a good person. There's lots of people that know me. They know sometimes they know a lot about me, so I have to be really careful when you're in your own community. Sometimes you have to be a bit more humble. But I just want you to know that it really is a privilege for me. I will continue to work hard. I do believe in our government. A PC government will deliver results, not only for Antigonish, but for Nova Scotia. And I ask for your vote on November 26th. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Michelle, and we'll turn it over to John David.
Thanks, everyone, for coming out. Again, thank you. Yeah, it's been a great evening. I've enjoyed hearing what the other candidates have to say. It's been informative for all of us, I'm sure. I want to close with some big picture thoughts, though, about what we face in this election here. You know, Tim Houston is considering private health care services as a possibility as supplementing the health system. Do we want that? Do Antigonishers want to see a government in Halifax that continues to protect big business at the expense of ordinary people, where the government's main focus is on the interests of lobbyists they play golf with? I don't know. Do Nova Scotians want to see the provincial government to keep sacrificing the environment at the behest of the developers and the large corporations that want to put in a new golf course or a resort down on the shore? Both the Conservative and Liberal parties support and can be counted on to implement neoliberal agenda that has produced skyrocketing inequality in our society, persistent poverty and homelessness, erosion of public services, not to mention the climate emergency. Neoliberal ideology is the trickle-down theory of economic growth. What we've seen since the 1980s is an incredible concentration of wealth going up the food chain, not down to the people that need it and keeping us struggling, those people struggling to make ends meet. During this election, both parties will put on a happy face on their platforms promising a bright future. But one thing we should recognize by now, both campaigns, both parties always campaign from the left, but then govern from the right. Stephen McNeil promised a bright future and delivered harsh austerity, the war on teachers and nurses, the erosion of social programs and environmental protection. At NSCC, the Education Department put a lot of fiscal pressure on the college, as was evidenced by our 11th hour negotiation. It was 97% of the faculty at NSCC were ready to go on strike because of the austerity that we were facing from the support from the government. As Tim Houston has broken many promises, but surely the integrity of government needs to be nurtured and protected. Politicians that break their promises should not be excused and rewarded. So I'm asking that democracy be defended, not challenged. The New Democrats continue to raise the alarm over the lack of transparency around unbudgeted government spending. Over $1 billion every year of unbudgeted, outside of the approval of the House has been spent. The Auditor General has been chastising the government and has asked them to rein that in. In March, she made 5 recommendations to improve transparency and accountability, and they rejected 4 out of 5 of those recommendations. Michelle Thompson and Sheila Sears are good people, and they deserve respect for the work they do. I want to thank them for that. Their parties, though, continue to stand for outmodeled neoliberal policies that are not in the interest of Nova Scotians, and sadly, that's the reality we live with today. Government should be accountable to the people that put their trust in them. The NDP offers policy alternatives that serve the interests of all Nova Scotians, not just a few at the top. Policies that improve and support those that need it the most. Mothers, single mothers, students, and new Canadians. I ask you to give Claudia Chender's NDP a fresh look, and look at the NDP when you think about it in November 26th. Thank you.
All right, so thank you to all of our candidates. I invite you now to give these folks a round of applause. Thank you. As I said, this is not an easy task, so I do really appreciate all of our candidates here participating in this process. I also want to thank all of you in the audience. Thank you for being so well behaved. This was great. Well done on your part as well. So before we close, I would like to call upon Francisco Chang, the President of the Students' Union, to give us some closing remarks.
Thank you. This has been amazing. I have to say that personally, even if I can't vote, because I'm an international student, I do see the value of sharing spaces like this where candidates can share their ideas and voters can inform themselves. I want to start by thanking the Mulroney Institute for sharing this event with us, the candidates for sharing their ideas, the audience for taking the time, Ex-Patrol for keeping us safe. Our marketing staff in the back for keeping the live stream up, FM, and really everyone who made this event possible. I have to say again, as Brendan said at the beginning, the Student Union is running the Get Out the Vote campaign, incentivizing students to pledge to vote, get involved, and engage civically. We'll be setting booths during the next month or so, where we'll be sharing information on how to pledge, where to vote, and everything that students need for November 26th. So yeah, something that I do want to share, because I was in the returning officer's office today, is that you don't have to wait until November 26th. You can go any day except Sundays to the RO's office to vote. So get out and vote. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Francisco. And I also do want to take a moment to applaud the Students' Union for all of their work around this Get Out the Vote campaign. They're doing really terrific work on this campus, and I hope that all of you students who are here are taking them up on all of the opportunities that they're creating to get more knowledge and more awareness of how to get registered, how to place a vote. Like I said, it's really fantastic to see. So, of course, we had a number of thank yous. I will also just extend a huge note of thanks to Dr. Anna Zuschlag for making tonight happen. She is, the person behind all of the Mulroney Institute events, and make sure that they are all flawless in their delivery. So, awesome. As we said, we also want to, of course, extend our thanks to Conference Services, Ex-Patrol, and Jim, who's running our IT in the back here. Marcy Baker as well for coordinating everything from our posters and emails and beyond. And of course, we want to thank everybody here in attendance for taking part in this process. Before I let you go, I am going to drop some information about our upcoming event. So I'm sure, there we go, all right. So the Mulroney Institute is starting a new series. Dr. Harling Stalker has developed a series around sober second thinkers, a speaker series dedicated to current and former senators. Our first event is on November 14th from 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. And this will feature the Honorable Wanda Thomas Bernard on Representation Matters, Reflections on the Power of Sober Second Thought. So again, you're all encouraged to attend this event, and make sure that you get out and vote, as we said, before or on November 26th. Thank you all for joining us, and have a great evening.